What do you get when you take people dedicated to their craft, going through leaps and bounds, acting on their plan of action even in the midst of adversity? You get a heartfelt story so organic and becoming so genuine, which forces you to be a part of their moment, joining these experiences as if you were a part of them. These are stories of people, just like you and I, reflecting from within on how they've used adversity to catapult their lifestyle, their vision, and their goals to becoming successful. Here at the Stories to Savor Network, we welcome you to this wonderful, heartfelt show entitled Reflections from Inside. So the next time you go through trials and tribulations, or having self-doubt, consider to let the stories resonate with you in hopes to inspire you to believe that you can do whatever you set your mind to do.
He was born and raised in Chicago with strong Southern roots that compelled him to not only open the first Southern kitchen in Lincoln Square, but the only restaurant of its kind in the area. He made significant sacrifices to bring his dream to life, which was to carry on his great-grandmother's spirit through her family recipes. I am thrilled to welcome my next guest to the show, Darnell Reed, owner and chef of LUELLA'S Southern Kitchen and the newest addition, LUELLA'S Gospel Bird. Darnell, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad that you're here. So tell us a little bit about your roots. Give us a little background on your upbringing.
Well, actually, myself, I was born and raised here in Chicago, so I'm 38 now. I was born in 1980. I grew up mostly on the south side of Chicago, spending a lot of time, obviously, with family, but a great deal of time with my great-grandmother. My mom had me when she was only 13, 13 years old. And from there, like, obviously it wasn't very popular to be, 12 years old and pregnant, and she had me when she was 13. So she had a rough time with her family, just dealing with that. So her mom wasn't very accepting of it, and she moved in with my great-grandmother. And that's kind of how the relationship has started with my great-grandmother and myself, Luella. So I was around her a lot.
You spent a lot of time with her then.
Yeah.
Sure.
Obviously her mom did, take her back at some point. But it was like, you're on punishment for getting pregnant, I guess. So, so I grew up mostly on the south side of Chicago. On a number of occasions, 2 occasions we lived in like the Robert Taylor homes. And my mom actually told me, which wasn't something that I noticed myself, but she told me, fast forward so many years later, when I got into culinary through high school and things like that, that she always knew that I was going to want to be a chef.
Really?
And the reason was because growing up, I used to love to watch Justine Wilson on Channel 11, the Cajun chef. So
everyone else is watching Bozo's show and you're watching cooking shows.
Yeah, I used to love to watch his show, and actually I didn't even really grasp the concept that he was a Cajun chef, like 'cause he was making gumbo, and well, actually I remember gumbo for the most part, one of the things that he actually made. So I grew up eating Luella's food while watching Justine Wilson, and I think that kind of molded me into doing what I'm doing today. Or at least having
Giving
interest.
you that Southern flair.
Yeah, at least having interest in it. But as far as other than that, growing up, I would say I was like any other kid. I was into sports. I love, for the most part, basketball and football. But I was a fan of baseball for a while. I kind of fell out of love with baseball. I don't know when it happened, but it happened.
But cooking was always your passion over that.
Yeah.
And you learned a lot from your great-grandmother? Was she always cooking in the kitchen? How did you two kind of sync up? Because sometimes kids are swatted out the way, like, you're underfoot, get out of the way, I'm cooking. But it sounds like she embraced you. No,
she embraced, I would say, everyone that visited her, because her house was like the place to be. It was like the spot. So, and the good thing about what I decided to do with having a restaurant, naming it Luella's Southern Kitchen, was because that's how kind of the way we felt, especially growing. I say we because it wasn't just myself. Myself, I have siblings, then we have cousins, and everyone would gather at her house. And it was really like we were going to her kitchen.
Yeah.
Because we really were. I remember the big kitchen table in the kitchen, and she was always cooking, and especially like holidays and different things like that. But even if it wasn't, there was one of the things that I remember from actually living with her at one point was that the smell of bacon in the morning, waking up, and she loved making.
It's probably the best smell ever.
Yeah.
That'll wake a kid up, right?
Yeah, it was like she would always make not always, but one of the most common breakfasts that I can remember was that she'll make scrambled eggs, rice, and bacon.
Wow.
And it was really good. So we used to, like I said, we used to eat over there, birthday parties over there, different things. She actually, in addition to all the cooking and things like that, I think that's where I got my love for movies and things, because she used to love to watch
Movies.
She used to watch Bloodsport, was like one of her favorite movies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she used to love to watch MacGyver, which was a show, but we used to watch MacGyver together and different things like that. But that was kind of.
So how did you get into cooking with her on a regular basis or learning from her? Did you just walk in and ask questions, or did she encourage you to come in?
You know, I didn't really ask questions at all. I just pretty much ate her food, and that was that, at least when I was a kid. And then growing up, I would have more memories of her cooking, because I started cooking professionally when I was 16.
Okay.
And then since the point where I was 16, I was working in the Palmer House. Since I was 16 years old, my life has been kind of consumed with working in kitchens.
Okay.
So I have a lot. It's kind of like when you go through the job interview, the chef or whoever's the owner of the restaurant or anything like that, they usually tell you, like, are you sure you want to get in this industry?
Right.
Because it will be a lot of time away from family and things like that. And when you first start, you're like, what was he talking about?
Right.
It's not true.
Yeah.
But the deeper you get into it, you start to realize, like, yes, it is true, because you don't spend a lot of time around your family and different things like that. So I'm kind of fast forwarding a little bit, but when at one point I was a chef at the Conrad.
Okay.
And we had an outdoor terrace. So on the outdoor terrace, we used to cook the different themed food, and the terrace is only open during the summer months. So we used to cook different themed food. One year we did Peruvian. One year we did just American cuisine. But I remember when we did American, the most popular items were those items that were Southern.
Okay.
So I decided, hey, you know what? Next year I'm gonna just go all out Southern. And when I was working, Conrad is part of Hilton. So when I was working for Hilton, our corporate chef came down, and he tried all the food and everything like that. And he was like, hey, you know, he really loved it actually, which was great. But his thing was, I want to tell a story behind it. And it was kind of his like,
okay,
why are we doing Southern food downtown Chicago?
Yeah.
And he was like, there needs to be some story that we can sell with the food, because he enjoyed it.
And was this your first time having to create a story behind food? Okay.
Yeah, that was the first time. And he asked me, it was kind of on the spot. He was like, who was your inspiration? And I told him, I was like, well, honestly, if I really had to think about it, the food that I'm cooking for you guys was my great-grandmother's food.
It's what you grew up on.
So he was like, well, why don't we just like put her name out there? And that was his idea.
Wow.
And actually it was himself, and it was the corporate food and beverage director. So it was Chef Mark, and then Shirley was the food and beverage director. And they were both there, and they both like, hey, let's put this spin on it. And my great-grandmother, growing up, we used to call her Bay. It was like a nickname.
Yeah.
So,
oh, that's cute.
And there, it was called like, I'm pretty sure it was like Bay's Kitchen or Bay's Southern Kitchen, if I remember correctly. And they put it on the menus in the restaurant, and they kind of marketed it that way. And that was the way we served the food. But it was at that moment that I decided, I always knew I wanted a restaurant.
Okay.
But it was at that moment that I thought, hey, you know what, this would be a great concept for a restaurant. And when I told her about it, obviously she was excited, because she's not with us today, but she was here when the restaurant, when the
idea came to be, yeah.
So yeah, I told her, I was like, you know, I want to open a restaurant, and I want to honor you and name it after you. But I know no one calls her Luella at all, even though it was her birth name. But I told her, I said, I think Luella sounds more Southern.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we should go with
it's a beautiful name.
Yeah, we should go with your name as opposed to Bay's Southern Kitchen. And she's like, hey, you know what? I'm just happy you're doing something, in honor of me. So call it whatever you want to call it. You know, if you're going to call it Luella, call it Luella. She was just happy that it was going to happen.
I love that story.
Yeah, so that's where it came about. And I did reach out to that chef and that food and beverage director. I told them that also. I think their headquarters is in Virginia, but they told me that at some point, if they have like meetings in Chicago, they'll stop by or something like that. But I did let them know that it was like they kind of inspired me to come up with.
Very good. So when we return, We're going to talk with Darnell a little bit more about how Luella's Southern Kitchen came to be and what sacrifices he had to make in order to get it up and running.